with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, we stay in the region. The United States is set to withdraw some troops from NATO's eastern flank, including from bases in Romania. Romania has confirmed that it has been notified of Washington's decision to reduce the number of soldiers deployed in the region. The move also includes U.S. forces that were to be stationed at the Romanian Mihail Kogalnicianu Air Base. Briefing further on the matter, Romania's defense ministry has said that the change involves halting the rotation of U.S. brigade that had elements in several NATO countries. The ministry has also added that the decision by the U.S. was expected, given current shifts in its security priorities. Let's listen in.
Am avut întâlnirea miniștrilor NATO la Bruxelles. Pete Hegseth, secretarul de stat american al apărării, a transmis încă o dată partenerilor europeni că acum că și-au consolidat europenii poziția pe flancul de est și în general în Europa și au agreat că se vor înarma mai bine, vor da mai multă atenție proprii apărări, Statele Unite se vor uita mai mult către Indo-Pacific. Discutăm, deci este bine să avem mai mulți militari. Totul depinde de discuțiile care se întâmplă și ieri m-am auzit cu comisarul Kubilius ieri după amiază. Suntem în legătură.
The move comes as U.S. President Trump's administration urges European allies to take greater responsibility for their own defense, as Washington chooses to focus more on its borders and the Indo-Pacific region. Now, this U.S. decision to cut troops in Romania has drawn attention amid ongoing war in Ukraine and concerns about security in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, a NATO official has responded to these developments, saying that such adjustments to U.S. force posture are not very unusual. The official has also confirmed that NATO was informed in advance and has stressed that Washington's presence in Europe remains larger than it has been in many recent years. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Sander van Hoorn. He's a former EU correspondent, joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you very much, Sander, for staying with us. Now, what's your analysis to this situation, especially given the fact that, EU is seeing a lot of airspace violation, and also Ukraine and Russia is still in war. What's your analysis?
Well, of course, you're right that especially now there's been another Russian fighter jet that was flying without its transponder switched on. Instances like these, and then the scaling back of American troops on an air base on the eastern flank of the EU, that is worrying some people. However, the US have not announced how many people will actually be withdrawn from that air base, and a lot of US troops will remain there. And you have to remember that when Russia violates or may violate EU airspace, most of the times it's European aircraft that scramble to intercept airplanes or drones. So this will not, I think, effectively weaken the eastern flank of the NATO territory, the European countries situated there. But it is a signal that have some people worried.
And to what extent do you think that this will have effect on Romanian perception of its security within NATO?
It depends to the extent that US troops will pull back there. A lot of them remain. And it will also be looking towards NATO to fill eventual gaps that the Americans may leave. And I think European countries will be eager to fill any gaps that may arise, because I think the defense of the eastern border of NATO, of the EU, which is more or less the same border in this respect, that is a priority that is being viewed as such by many European countries. If you take, for example, the Netherlands, where elections are held today, opinions about anything differ widely, except for the fact that defense spending needs to be raised up to the norms that NATO set for that. And you see that in many more European countries where defense spending is actually on the rise. And that is, of course, because Donald Trump has said that more European money needs to be spent on defense. That is a view that he shares with many European leaders that maybe have been shaken awake by him, but are rising up to the occasion. And I think that will be seen in Romania as well, where any gaps left by the Americans will quickly be filled by European countries.
Right, and thank you for connecting it to our previous discussion as well, Sander. And how might this troop withdrawal impact broader transatlantic relations and confidence on U.S.'s role in NATO and U.S.'s posture towards Europe's defense cooperation?
Well, you've got incidents and trends, and if you call this an incident, a single announcement made by the US concerning the number of troops, the number of money being spent in Europe, that's an incident, and that may worry some. I talked about the fact that it is a reduction of troops on an air base where the airspace has been violated by Russia many times, so that may be worrying, but the trend has been known. The trend that US will pull back some of its troops from Europe, that the US expects Europe to spend more on its own defense. That has been a trend for a while now. And you see European politicians, countries, but also the EU scramble to rise up to this occasion. So I think the trend is not surprising. This incident may surprise some.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Sander van Hoorn for joining us all the way from Amsterdam and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we stay in Europe. A migrant sex offender who was mistakenly released from prison has now been deported back to Ethiopia from the United Kingdom and will not be allowed to return. Hadush Kebatu, who sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl and a woman in Epping, Essex, was accidentally freed by prison staff last Friday. Police launched a 2-day manhunt and arrested him in North London before he was put on a flight to Ethiopia on Tuesday night. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood calls the mistake unacceptable and says every effort was made to get Kebatu off British soil. United Kingdom's Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary David Lammy calls it a human error. The Home Office has launched an independent inquiry led by Dame Lynn Owens to look at prison procedures and make sure this does not happen again. Stricter checks are now in place for offenders leaving custody. Local MPs and residents say they are relieved and want stronger oversight of this system. And that's a wrap on the NewsX Eurozone. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.